the difference between a person who's just a millionaire, and I divide it into conventional and conscious approaches to business. So conventional is basically, it's about the money and the profit. And that's a great thing, but it's not necessarily about doing anything that truly matters. It's more about how do you develop a product and service and figure out how to market to people, as opposed to how do you positively uplift your client and in the process uplift humanity and make this a better place. And then your service or your product is accomplishing both of those. So it's about creating an unlimited amount of impact and turning that impact actually into the money. So the reason people buy from you as a conscious entrepreneur, it's very much in alignment with this, typically an internal purpose that you have, some kind of a difference you want to make in the world. And out of that comes a service or product that creates that result. And that's the reason people buy it. But it achieves those twofold: uplift humanity and make money and put it in the bank.
Hi, I'm Chris Waddell. Welcome to Living It, the podcast where we join experts in the experience of being human. Be bold. Say yes to adventure. Say yes to living it. Welcome to Chris Waddell Living It, where we talk with experts in the experience of being human. Today we have JV Crum III, who's going to join us. He's the founder of ConsciousMillionaire.com and the world's #1 limitless mindset expert. He unlocks the minds of 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs so they can put more money in the bank and massively impact humanity. JV has built and sold companies, is an attorney, is a 34-time #1 international best-selling author. He created the Global Mindset to Millions event and hosts the Conscious Millionaire show, heard by millions in 190 countries. Welcome, JV. Thank you for joining us.
Well, Chris, first of all, thank you, because you've been on my Conscious Millionaire show, and that was such a great interview. And it's just a pleasure to know you. And just my kudos to all the things that you've accomplished. And it's an honor being here.
Well, thank you so much. It's interesting reading your bio and looking at your bio. It's the Conscious Millionaire, but the millionaire sometimes takes precedence over the conscious part. Can you describe to me what a conscious millionaire is and why it's so important to have the conscious part?
Yeah, so absolutely. And I really think it's the future. Not only do I think, I also hope that it's the future of where we're headed in terms of as a planet. And to me, the difference between a person who's just a millionaire, and I divide it into conventional and conscious approaches to business. So conventional is basically, it's about the money and the profit. And that's a great thing, but it's not necessarily about doing anything that truly matters. It's more about how do you develop a product and service and figure out how to market to people, as opposed to how do you positively uplift your client and in the process uplift humanity and make this a better place. And then your service or your product is accomplishing both of those. So it's about creating an unlimited amount of impact and turning that impact actually into the money. So the reason people buy from you as a conscious entrepreneur, it's very much in alignment with this, typically an internal purpose that you have, some kind of a difference you want to make in the world. And out of that comes a service or product that creates that result. And that's the reason people buy it. But it achieves those twofold: uplift humanity and make money and put it in the bank.
So in a lot of ways, this is a win-win kind of situation.
Well, I look at it as a win-win-win. It's you, it's the client, and it's humanity all being uplifted and all being better off at the same time.
So this really is sort of like the top level of enlightenment, right? And we often operate on a bottom level of enlightenment where it's you or me kind of thing. I mean, oftentimes that's the way the society seems to work, where this is what I do. I mean, this is like Aristotle, I think, right? What I do for my community is what I do for myself.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because in my book, I start off in chapter 1, Conscious Millionaire, Grow Your Business by Making a Difference. So you already have the theme right there. And I said, well, really the first stage, I like to think in three. So I go the first stage of entrepreneurship and the first stage of capitalism was really all about how do we understand the mechanics of making money and getting to the bottom line. So increasing sales, but that's where it ended. And then the second stage, which is what Conscious Millionaire, a lot of different approaches were really all about the same thing. And it's about the triple win of you, others, and humanity. So in that first version, it's very ego-based only, and it's a win-lose. It's not a win, even a win-win. There are 100 marbles in the bag, and your goal is to get them all, right? And if nobody, and of course, it's thoughtless in a lot of ways, because once you start understanding a conscious approach to business where you, others, and humanity are all winning, and then you realize the synergy of all that is going to make you more money, in fact, is that in this first version, you're pretending that somehow if you put everybody out of business, you'll be better off. And if all of your suppliers make as little money as possible, and by God, don't play your employees too much either, right? That actually you win. But it's only because you're coming in that first model from a scarcity or lack mindset. So you believe there's never enough of anything. And that's the only reason you feel a need to compete. Once you understand and you move over to the second stage and you come into what I call not just abundance, but limitless abundance, which I actually believe is the actual natural state of everything on this planet. And if you look at nature, nature's living in limitless abundance, right? And it's also living in balance. And you look at biomimicry, and then if you do manufacturers like biomimicry, you don't have waste. So once you move over here and you go, wait a minute, I don't have to compete for customers, because all the right customers, if I send out the message, if I call to them, I look at it like calling almost evangelically. And I don't mean evangelically in some, fundamentalist religious way. I mean, but you're an evangelist calling out to people to come so that you can solve their problems in a way that uplifts them and puts them in a better place. And by golly, if they go out in the world and they're in a better place, humanity will be in a better place, because all their interactions are better off. Now you've got limitless abundance because it's all based on how much value you can deliver. And the last time I checked, there's no limit on the amount of value each of us on this planet and together could possibly deliver.
Do you see this as evolutionary?
Yes.
The start of how does the evolutionary part work in terms of where we are, where we're going, what we're doing? I mean, we've seen a huge gulf between the very rich and the very poor right now, and which in some ways is some of like what Marx had talked about, right? And that we get this huge gulf, and that eventually the rich will have to before the revolution is that you have to support the poor before the revolution, and then there's this worldwide revolution. So where does this all fit?
Well, it's kind of interesting, because I'm a philosopher type. My minor was in philosophy in undergraduate, and when I started out working on Conscious Millionaire, when it came to me, it is an inspired thought, actually in a hot tub. But we're all inspired thoughts should. But I go, if they ever do the movie, they ought to add a bottle of, Cabernet, because I actually wasn't drinking at the time. It'd make the story more interesting. And so here comes this thought, Conscious Millionaire. And I see it on my forehead. And I got a tingling in my spine. And I had at that point been for about 3 years looking for my calling. And in that one moment, it was less than 60 seconds, was like that. I knew that this was what I was supposed to be doing. Didn't know what it was, but I go, oh my God, that's so cool. So what's that going to be? Right?
And this specifically talking about Conscious Millionaire, or?
Yeah. So it just came to me as a flash. And then when I was working on the first book, I'm working on another book right now. And I knew that I was creating a philosophy. And so one of the things, 320-page book. So it was actually every time I'd have a new change of thought, which was happening all the time when I write. Right now, I'm now in this new stage with my new book, Conscious Millionaire, Your 7 Money Mindsets. And that's still happening, but where I'm in an early stage, and it's going to be a shorter book. But with 320 pages, every time I'd have a shift, I had to think through the entire book and go find anything that might be contrary to that. Because what was critical to me is I said, you're founding something that's going to be a big philosophy. Every sentence must be consistent within this book. And that actually took a lot of work, but that's how I figured out that for me, because I'd already gone and lived at a Buddhist monastery, lived at Esalen. So for me, this is about the evolution of consciousness on this planet. And as we move in this direction of all of us winning together, that's a very different consciousness that I'm going to outcompete you to see how I get a bigger house. That's a very different philosophy, because it also is about unity and oneness. And we're not just in the game together, we are the game together.
Well, this is coming from the Buddhist teachings as well, right?
Well, yeah. So I am definitely influenced by not just the intellectual understanding, but where I first started experiencing it, and now I just experience it because it's how I've evolved, was through meditation, to having that insight, not just intellectually, but experientially, of oneness, that I started experiencing oneness, and I'm going, oh, so I'm kind of onto something here. So this is showing me that I and the plant that I'm looking at are actually one, but it's not just an idea, it's an experience. And when I started having that experience, then I'm going, oh, this is a whole different approach to everything. And then when I started deciding, well, I want to work with entrepreneurs, but I want to take them in a different direction, that's when the Conscious Millionaire came up. It's not just about making money. It's about evolving ourselves, because on the journey of becoming a conscious millionaire, and that's a concept, it can be a conscious billionaire. It's not limited to this 1 million. It's really more a way of doing business and approaching your life. But you're the one, as the entrepreneur, that has to grow and evolve consciously in order to take that journey. So I see the journey itself as a spiritual journey.
It's a spiritual journey. What's the role of money in this? I mean, as I said in the beginning, like the millionaire part jumps out at you. And so many people think, okay, if I were a millionaire, then my life would be easier or whatever, like what's the role of money and the representation of money?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that money is a means to an end. And I think when you start looking at how to build your business, where the first question is, how do I make that impact? Not how do I hook somebody to buy something from me, which is kind of the conventional question. It's like, oh, how are we going to get the marketing right so that people buy from us? Well, in the conscious business, you still have to get the marketing right. It's still it's still a marketplace. We've got a lot of ideas, and your idea has to attract someone. But all of a sudden, it's about money both being made. So the old model is you make money and then you use it for good and put some money in nonprofits. But how you made the money doesn't have to have any goodness to it at all.
Sure.
Right?
Robert Baron kind of concept.
Yeah. So you can sell cigarettes. I use that because I don't mind offending those people. They'll never be on my show. They'll never sponsor the show. So if they hate me, it's okay. But I think they ought to be out of business personally. So there you're just making money, but you might take the money and do something good with it, right? So for instance, I went to Wake Forest, and unless you went to Wake Forest, have no reason to know this, but Wake Forest was built by the Reynolds Tobacco Company. So they made money selling cigarettes, killing people with cancer, and built this wonderful university, right? That's, if you look at the history of the United States, most of the things that were built came out of money that actually might have caused harm, but then they did something good. So at the conscious business level, so the conscious millionaire approach is that your business in and of itself is selling services and products that have intrinsic value that uplift people. So it does good by existing and selling these to people. And in addition, I have a nonprofit, a global nonprofit. So ultimately, most of the money I make will go to the global nonprofit, but I made it from doing something good as well. That's the conscious model.
And the conscious part occurs on both the company level and on the individual level, right? I mean, the conscious part with the individual is making this decision to move forward and sort of moving into this point of leaving the world of being a victim and actually moving toward being responsible for your, not necessarily for your actions, but for your path, which is kind of an interesting thought, in that the victim side can be a little bit more comfortable sometimes, in that we have someone to blame. That if things aren't going right, that it's my boss's fault. But on the conscious side, you're taking responsibility for where you're going. So you are ultimately responsible for the direction that you're going. How do you get people to leave sort of the paradoxical comfort of being a victim and make that conscious decision?
Well, there are many ways I think I could answer that question. I see my role is inviting people to go down the conscious rabbit hole. And the movie Matrix very much informs how, because I'm a mindset expert, very much informs how I see mindset, very much informs how I see my role with companies. People ultimately want to make more money. That's why they pay me high fees to work with them, right? But in the process, they're choosing to work with me because they want to unlock some things inside of them. And they buy into this idea of a conscious approach, or actually, I won't take them as a client because I don't want to work with people who say want to use their employees, as opposed to it's almost an insult to me, this whole concept of human resources, right? It's like people as assets. Well, whatever happened, I just cut a show that's coming out in a couple of weeks on love mindset. And I'm talking about loving your clients and what a different approach that is, that if you genuinely love and have compassion and empathy for your clients, as opposed to just see them as a source of putting some money in your bank. Those are very different approaches. And I said, by the way, if you love your clients, they're going to love you as well. And, and they'll probably want to stay with you a lot longer, because who doesn't want to stay with somebody who's helping them get their problem solved? And by the way, they love them as well. And they treat them like family. It's like, what a concept. So I think that the one of the real differences is someone as a founder and CEO of their business, like a Conscious Millionaire, all the people who work with me or provide services to me, they buy into what we're doing. They believe in what we're doing, right? And they want to be a part of that. And so it really, this is about business as a movement for good, and for changing the world, and for changing people's lives, and changing organizations, whomever you have as your clients. And that's a very different approach to business as well. And it's much more exciting and joyful that you're doing something that makes a difference in the world. At the end of the day, I think most people, if they're doing something that they feel is meaningful, will go the extra mile, much more so than if they're just looking to put money in the bank. That's not such an exciting journey, actually, especially when you can put money in the bank and do something good and feel good about it, and feel, like at the end of the day, you're fulfilled and you helped other people get fulfilled.
Well, it's having a mission, having your sense of why, which really is the thing that's visceral, right? I mean, that's not intellectual. It really is part of
heart-based. Yeah, it's heart-based.
It is. It's heart-based. And so to be able to communicate that with people, it's interesting. You mentioned the Matrix and How many times have you seen The Matrix?
About 40 times, and I own the script as well.
It is.
So I've kind of like taken a course called The Matrix, right? I've been studying this for years.
And to look at the conscious millionaire, part of the conscious millionaire is really simple. I mean, as an athlete, for me, if you do the basics well, you are most likely going to be successful. When you have a problem, you return to the basics. So to talk about conscious and focus and action, I mean, it's not earth-shattering in some ways, but the earth-shattering part is achieving this sense of simplicity. Is that part of what appeals to you within the Matrix? I'm looking at, like, you know, bullet time and things like this heightened sense of perception is that part of the goal as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. Nobody's asked me that question about the Matrix, so I appreciate it. I am finding, you know, here I am writing this new book, and the first thing I realized, I just wrote the first part, and I started on chapter 1. I thought, what a place to start. Let's start on chapter 1. So let's introduce it all. And it's been, you know, eight years since the first book came out. And what I realized, and now that we're talking about it, I'm realizing there's a second part to it, is I wrote about a page, and it's really simple, short sentences, very clean. And I said to myself, I stopped and I said, wow, you are so much better writer than when you started the first book. But I'm realizing it isn't just writing. I am living a life that's increasingly about simple essence. When I'm working with clients, you know, at the end of every session, I ask them all the same question: what was most valuable today? Now, they have different kinds of companies, there are different stages, there are different levels of conscious development. It is rare that everyone doesn't say this is at least one, and they might come up with 2 or 3 things, but they always start with, oh, I'm so much more clear. Yeah, because we got rid of the noise from the questions I asked, and now there's clarity. And in clarity is always, to me, clarity is like 2 or 3 words and you have it. You don't need pages. It's like, oh, now I get it, right? And I think in many ways, that's what I do with people's minds, is that I unlock them. But in the process of unlocking them, we get through all this noise and miswiring that's going on. It's like wires are all over the place. Like, I'm working with a new client, and it's really clear to me what's going on is they're wired that it's not okay to receive. Well, this causes a lot of problems in building a business. But guess what?
To receive what? What is that?
To receive, period. Because once I realized, you know, typically, because it's a business, we're working on receiving money. But receiving money is receiving love, receiving relationships, receiving adoration. You know, that what I find is that when a mind is set up that way, and by the way, almost everybody's mind is set up that way at some level. It's just, it might be at a higher level. But to go to another level financially almost always requires you to allow yourself to receive at a higher level. It isn't that you have to have the greatest new strategy, but you've got to be able to visionarily see a bigger vision, but you've also got to see and experience energetically, not just in the mind, but in the emotions, that it's possible for you to receive more, and then change your identity so that you're a person, you know, like right now, I'm looking for some billionaires to work with. So that's kind of like a new project. And I'm realizing very quickly it's kind of a category of one, because most people don't work with billionaires to do the kind of work that I'm doing. And they don't charge $1 million for doing it, which I've decided is clearly what it's worth given the results I can get. But I'm going, I have a model of a 1 to 5, but ideally 1 to 3 billionaire who wants to go to 10. So I've been modeling, I'm going, this is no different than somebody who's 1 to 3 million who wants to go to 10 million. It's actually the same process. The entire reason that this person, so most people go, oh, well, that's so much money. I go, yeah, but it's not 10. You know, the reason they're say at 1 billion and not 10 is they actually have a 1 billionaire mindset. And that's the problem right there. And until they unlock it, and they have to change their identity, and they have to change their receiving, and they have to change their vision. Until you change all that, you can throw all the strategies you want, but you'll probably keep it out. You'll probably stay in a plateau or a slow growth because you have to literally change who you are. You know, when I was 5 years old, growing up in a family, we didn't have any money, and I decided I'd be a millionaire. And then I got there at 25. The joke to me is that people go, oh my God, you got there so young, especially when I got there. People, you know, now at 25, they've made their first billion. But I said, well, not really. For 20 years, I'd been reprogramming myself that I was supposed to be a millionaire rather than living in a little town of 200 or 300 people where nobody had money. I said, I've been changing my mindset about who I was. And it's because I changed my mindset that I figured out how to manifest it. The manifestation does not come first. You come first.
How much of that? So
and that's true in sports as well. It's no different, right?
Oh, no, it's, I mean, you talk about visualization. Visualization is a huge part of sport.
But it's also emotionalization.
Imagining yourself in that position and
feeling it.
Because you're talking about the same thing in both things where we're allowing yourself to receive is essentially visualizing that next and feeling that next step. What we know is often really comfortable. And then you talked about yourself as a young kid, as a 5-year-old saying, I'm going to be a millionaire, being in a small town, not having much money, but also did you think that you were different? I mean, you also are part of the Mensa Society, right? So
but I didn't know that back then.
You had to know some of it back then,
well,
right?
No, my parents would always say, you're smart enough to do anything you want. I didn't know that meant X, right? And by the way, up until in the 7th grade, when we moved to the town with 20,000 people in it, I was actually put in remedial classes and labeled as stupid. I had bad grades. I now know it's because I was bored to death with these country school marms who were not challenging me, to say the least. I'd have my homework done. I'd have my schoolwork done by 12, and then I'd run around the class, which, you know, for 3 hours because I had nothing to do. So I got sent to, I'm actually proud of this. So few people can make this claim. In the 5th grade alone, I got sent to the principal's office 9 times, you know, and I'm thinking there took a little bit of art form for that I probably should appreciate it, because then I'd come home and every day my mom would go, did you get sent to the office today? And I go, no, ma'am, but ask tomorrow. Literally, I would say that to her. It kind of irritated her a little bit, but it was true. And then they'd send me to the office again. So I was in this remedial classes with remedial teachers. And at the end of the 7th grade, in fact, when my dad died, I had to go through, you know, the whole house. I'm an only child. And I found my 7th grade report card, and it wasn't good. And I made a decision there had to be a trick to making an A. Now, I went from being the 7th grade labeled stupid remedial classes to being the 4.0 valedictorian, because I made a decision at the end of the 7th grade. I didn't like this story at all. I didn't want to spend another year in these kind of classes with these kind of teachers and these kind of students. I was going to find a new path. That to me is what unlocking your mind is about, because that really was a mindset journey.
How do you do that? How do you change that story? Because even though you're only 7th grade, right? You're 12, you're 13 years old or something, it's fairly ingrained in you. And you make a conscious, to use your word, conscious decision that you're going to change that. How do you go about affecting that change?
Yeah, so I think the first step for everyone is that you have to come to a point of deciding that how I'm showing up, really, even though I didn't know those words, I hadn't read personal growth books or anything, but how I was showing up and how I felt about it and didn't feel like who I wanted to be. And I made the decision, this is not going to be me. And I spent 2 years figuring out how to make an A. There were no trainings. And then 10th grade, I started, high school, because that's when we started, when I was going to school. And at the end of the first semester, and when I tell this story, I know exactly where I was standing in the school halls. I opened my report card and I had a 4.0. And within probably 2 seconds, I looked at it. I'd never thought about being the valedictorian or anything. I said, I'm going to be the valedictorian. And then I did something, and I today we call it PR, we call it media. I went around school and I told every student in every class and every teacher that I was going to be the valedictorian. It's like I put people on notice. Don't even think about it. This is mine.
Well, you also put yourself on notice as well.
I did.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. I like right now, I'll tell you the thing I'm telling people, and it's interesting, the responses that are happening is that I'm saying 10 years from now, I'm going to be worth 100 million.
Mhm.
Now, I'm nowhere close to 100 million right now. And first of all, I want you to know you're listening. Doesn't bother me in the least. And nor do I even have the slightest inkling, oh my God, what if I fail? Nope, not part of my mindset. I am telling everybody, and here's what's happening. People are wanting to get on board. It's as if it's already happened, because I'm going, this is where I'm going, right? And then they want to be associated with me because, oh my God, I'm going to 100 million. Maybe it will rub off on them or whatever. And it will, because it's a way of thinking first and foremost, that I've simply decided that's what I'm going to do.
It's an exciting journey, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to 100 million. This is good. What does that mean to get to 100 million? I mean, it's a nice round number.
Yep.
What does that mean? Why?
Well, I've actually calculated how much money I need to accomplish what I want to accomplish.
Okay.
So number one, I know all those dollars are accounted for already.
Hold on, but what do you want to accomplish, I guess, is the question as well.
Yeah, so there are actually three things I want to accomplish with that outcome. And I don't call it a goal, I call it a commitment.
Okay.
One of them is personal. I unabashedly like to live well. I do. So 10 million of it is just for living well. Homes, I love to collect art. The fortunate thing is most things I'll personally buy with it or appreciable assets. So at some later date, they'll get sold and there'll be more money from it. I just get to use the money to do something I find fun in the meantime. The majority of it, 90 million, is to fund my nonprofit, constantly be funding it, and also other causes that I believe in. And then the part that is perhaps the biggest driver is to take the journey and who I have to become to achieve that outcome. That's the part that's what gets me up in the morning. And it's the kind of clients I work with is they want to become and achieve something far beyond where they are today. If it's a little step, I just at a point I don't want their money. I don't want to work with people who have a little view of life. I want to unlock people who have a big goal, because the big outcomes are first, and you know this because of all the stuff you've achieved as an athlete, they're not only more exciting and motivating, I contend they're easier to achieve than a small outcome. Because a small outcome is boring. It's not motivating. It's not exciting. You don't have to be on your A game to achieve it. And as a result, you typically don't even achieve it because you don't have to play full out. But when you're playing for something big, you don't have a choice but to play full out. There is no other option, but that turns you into a new person with new capabilities, with a new vision. And then you become a model for other people that, yes, this is possible. Let me show you the way. This is what I figured out. you can do the same thing. It's not like we're sitting here and you and I are unique people, although we have our uniqueness. I think we're more modelers for other people about what's possible.
I mean, we learn from other people. We know that we do that. I always say that we know who inspires us, but we don't necessarily know who we inspire. And so sometimes we do. You work with a whole lot of people, so you might actually know who you inspire. But it's interesting, the commitment. It's interesting, the big goal. It's interesting publishing that big goal. You're telling other people, you know that they know that you know that they know. And then you're like, okay, now I'm held to this, but being held to that standard, this is when you're alive. This is when you're playing for all of the marbles. It's what was that line from Matt Damon in Rounders, where he's like, that's where I was really, I mean, he was saying it to his girlfriend, which didn't go over all that well, but that playing at the poker table, that's when he was really alive, that everything actually really mattered to him. Does fear play a role in this? You say that it's a commitment, it's not a goal. Where does fear fit into this whole thing?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Fear does fit into it. As I'm writing this new book, I'm creating a new model. So I'm actually taking and trying it out on me, and I'm trying it out with people I have in a group, like, oh, okay, so let's see how this works. Let's see how that works. And one of the things I'm playing around with this week is actually the feelings that come up when we think about any of these 7 money mindsets which require change.
Mm-hmm.
And the feelings that keep us stuck as opposed to moving forward and creating this new change, whether it's an abundance belief or it's a shift in our identity, or it's owning that there's things that are possible that we've been telling ourselves were impossible. And what I'm finding with myself, and what I just found with the group that I train this week, is that the feelings of unresolved childhood BS, or what's coming up for me, and it was what was coming up for them as well. So here I was with a group that have paid a fair amount to be with me. They're very committed. And for every one of them we were talking, it ended up, the coaching topic was not money. But for every one of them, it became, what was stopping them from going to the next level was their fear of receiving more money.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, this is interesting. And then that unravels to unresolved childhood stuff. That one of the reasons someone, whether it's at 1 million or 100 million or 1 billion, and they're not 10 times that right now, is that parts of their mind and parts of their internal feelings are stuck at 7 years old or whatever age it is, right? And that stuff has not been released yet.
So there's,
because we're still playing that game inside unconsciously.
Playing that game unconsciously. And so effectively, in a lot of ways, they are unworthy. I mean, you've told us your story to a certain extent. So you're that 7th grade kid in the remedial class, which effectively, in some ways, is telling you that you're stupid.
Right.
And, through the mind of a 13-year-old, right? They put me here because I'm stupid. And
that was part of, at the end of the year, I went, well, wait a minute, I'm not stupid, right? I can figure this out, and I'm not willing to live here anymore, which was a profound, and probably the first major pivot in my life was at 5, making the declaration, one day I'm going to be a millionaire. And it was bang, like that. And it was, how are we going to solve this problem? We don't have food. My parents are always arguing over money. I'm already tired. At 5, I was already tired of it because it was going on like all day long, right? And I said, well, we're going to solve this problem. And then in the 7th grade, I go, well, we're going to solve this problem of being in class, because it was actually painful, because the teachers, who gets to teach the remedial classes? For the most point, I can just tell you from experience, it's remedial level teachers. They don't put the smart, I'm sure there are places, there are very smart teachers who volunteer and want to do this, but I did not have very smart teachers, right? I even had one teacher.
My father started in special ed, started teaching special ed, and I certainly would put him up there as someone who you'd want to listen to. But I will go with your experience. You have more
Yeah,
experience.
so I had a history teacher, American history, and for a guy in a remedial class, she made me teach the class for 6 weeks. She didn't even teach, and I had to make up the tests. And I'm in a remedial class, and I'm thinking, God, something's wrong with this, right? And I didn't even get a friggin' A, right? And I had to teach every day. I had to come with lesson plans. It was a bizarre situation. I don't know how she got by with that, but today it probably wouldn't work. But yes, it is about unlocking your inner potential. But that inner potential, when people work with me, I haven't figured out the best way to express this because I say I'm a mindset, limitless mindset. But every person I coach goes, oh, wow, this is way beyond mindset. And it is, it's about consciousness, layers of consciousness. And that's why the matrix, I think, appeals to me as well, is that we have this matrix, which is our conventional view of reality, which is the one, by the way, that keeps you from being a millionaire or 10 million or 100 or a billionaire, because you don't get there thinking conventionally usually. And then it's like, but wait a minute. I kept watching the movie, and there was that one moment where I realized, because my favorite part of the movie is the last 10 minutes, where Neo becomes the one. But I went, here's where the movie fails, as much as I love it, is it does the same thing that we've done throughout history. There's this one person. Religion does it, right? There's this one person. And I'm going, wait a minute. We're all the one. We're all Neo. And when I had that insight, that was really powerful. And I said, that's what the movie did wrong, is it lived the myth that there's this one person with special powers. No, we all are the one. We all can become Neo. And that's what limitless mindset to me is all about, is that we all have that potential. How high do you want to play?
But it's a matter of going back to a certain extent and reprogramming out the limit.
Yeah. So you have to allow, as I start working with someone, that stuff's all going to come up. And that's okay, because that's what's running it in underneath the conscious level. And there you are being a billionaire, and you can't figure out why you're getting the 10 billionaire. And part of you is still thinking, as strange as it would sound on paper, like, well, that shouldn't be going on. But no, this is the human journey. It does go on.
So are you tapping into the psychology part? I mean, you have your JD, you have your MBA, have a master's in psychology. Is this what you were doing when you started working with your father out of college in your trucking, in the trucking company, right? In the citrus company? Is that how, were you tapping into the psychology part?
Well, here's what I was tapping into, because I've looked back. I mean, I took what was basically a bankrupt company, turned around and made it very successful. And I really was focused on two things. One, I didn't know it at the time, but I'd done things like I was a 19-year-old senior in college with the 4, taking 21 credits. And I can tell you the only way you can do that is you're very systemized. I could tell you 2 weeks from now at 7 p.m. what course I was going to be studying, because I had it mapped out. When you're taking that many courses, I had an hour for this course, and I had to finish the homework. So it's like, it's always putting me up against the bar. But I was very systemized. So I immediately started systemizing everything. But the other one, and it's one of the 7 money mindsets I teach, is flow money mindset. I had naturally learned how to get into flow. And in that flow state, the synchronicity of things started coming together. Where to go, oh, that's the answer I need, right?
What do you mean by flow state?
Okay, so for me, flow state is that state where you are one with the energy in you are one with the natural flow of energy and the direction in which it's headed. So you surrender into this flow state. And I have a 3-step process for doing that. At the time, I was just doing it naturally. I'd never analyzed it because I wanted to learn how to teach it to people ultimately. And then synchronicity starts happening. And synchronicity is like you open a book and the paragraph you read is the answer you were looking for. Or you end up on a phone call with somebody and it's the person you need to be talking to. It's how I live and run my entire business. And it works at such a high level at this point that one of the biggest problems I'm facing right now is how to assemble the right team, because the level of opportunities that are coming to me are so high and so frequently. It's like what to do with them all. So I have the problem of overabundance as opposed to lack, right?
Right.
And so, but that's what flow takes you. And so I was naturally seeing, oh, this is direction. Like after 4 months, we had all this equipment. We were having repair companies repair it, and we'd take the equipment to them. And I was already realizing, oh my God, the piece of equipment is down for a week. We've lost all this productivity. We're paying them too much money. And I started another company 4 months in, it's a little 23-year-old, and I started a maintenance company and hired 2 maintenance people and hired rented out a maintenance facility. And now we started doing all of our own stuff, and the costs went through the floor and the profit started growing. And that followed after 3 months. I was analyzing all of the numbers because I've always been a numbers person. And I spent the whole weekend, I couldn't figure out how we were pulling this many loads, bringing in this kind of revenue, and every week we couldn't pay our bills. And then I had the startling, but it's a flow synchronicity. It's like, oh, we're charging too little. And so I called up all our, unfortunately, there was a lack of trucks in our particular niche. So I didn't know at the time how I had that leverage going with me, but I just figured I got people the next day to raise their rates as much as 25%. I said, we can't keep hauling for you. And they needed us. I said, we're being paid too little. And I renegotiated in a very short period of time, all of our rates. And then we've got much higher revenues. We've got much lower expenses. And oh, that gap in between became cash flow and profits. So within 4 months, we went from losing a ton of money to making a lot of money and moving in the right direction. But that was also going with the flow of seeing the natural course of events and just being with that and seeing where it went.
Flow is an interesting concept because I know you meditate as well.
Yeah.
And meditation is actually the state that our mind and our body wants to get to. But the flow part, it can be challenging sometimes to get there, to achieve that sort of level of flow, because we have whatever barriers that we've created in order to get there. Sport is a similar kind of way that oftentimes we are our own worst enemy, that the more we try to think about something, the less we're actually able to do what we're supposed to do. In some ways, it's kind of like watching a cat jump, right? Where they are so good at not having the opposing muscles engaged, and they can do these phenomenal things. And you look at, wow, that is absolutely amazing. So is this some of where this idea of flow is? It's almost, in some ways, it almost sounds like you're saying, like, the flow is achieved in not taking yourself too seriously.
Well, the flow is achieved. It's not the not taking yourself seriously. It's being willing to surrender yourself.
Okay, so similar kind of thing.
The first step in getting into flow that I teach, and this is how I wrote it when I wrote the book, but now I'll be writing it differently, and that is being present. But what I've realized from so many of the states that I've visited, including states where I can see past, present, and future simultaneously, and in which time goes backwards and forwards in some of these states, is that it's really not about being present. It's about being surrendered into the now. And that now is different than present, because present's on a timeline, past, present, future. But now is without time. It's no time. And it's when you allow yourself to surrender into no time, being in now, that's when you start to enter flow.
How do you reconcile surrendering yourself into no time with the idea of expectations?
That's a great question. Well, I actually have two states of flow. Most people only teach one because I wanted to answer that question. I wanted to create a model that would answer it because I like to create models. So when you want to create an outcome, and I actually looked at what athletes were doing to get clues for how to do this, is that it's actually a 7-step model. And I just want to say that you start off with flow. You get into that flow situation. So flow to me is the way to approach your day in business, the way to approach life, right? But then you have that conscious focused action. You have a mindset of outcome, but the outcome arises from being in flow, and you get there with greater speed, a whole lot more ease by starting out in flow, as opposed to starting out in what might best be called effort. So you're not efforting, you're flowing. And when you think of Michael Phelps, because I was a swimmer in high school, so I find Michael Phelps very interesting, because of how much he's achieved. But if we go back to London, where he won the breaststroke in 1/100th of a second. And the difference is he reached rather than taking another stroke. And at a deep level, he was, I guarantee you, in very deep flow, because this is beyond the conscious mind making a decision. He simply in flow reached out and touched the pad. And had he done anything else, he probably wouldn't have placed.
And was that the breaststroke or was that
Yeah.
the butterfly?
I thought it was the breaststroke, but you're the athlete, so I could have told this story wrong all this time.
I don't know. I feel like he didn't swim the breaststroke. That's the only reason I asked. But it's interesting that you mentioned, because that loops back to so much of what you have talked about. His coach has talked about how Michael was an amazing did a lot of visualization, like knew exactly what he was going to do within each part of the race. And it's why he was successful. He had his goggles, what crack or something like that, and one, and his eyes were full of water and couldn't really see. And it might have even been that race that you're talking about. And his coach actually would throw these kind of obstacles in front of him, where he would steal his goggles or he'd show up late to pick him up, so that causing all this anxiety and preparing him for that moment. But I think what's interesting in the flow, I think we've all experienced it to a certain extent, is when we know that this is the right action in that moment, as opposed to the thinking, oh, if I do this, oh, but that person's doing that, and I need to do this to counteract that. And then you've lost any sense of your personal performance or your place in space, I guess, space and time and meaning. And so it's interesting that you talk about the Michael Phelps thing, but how do you take this sense of flow? And I mean, it sounds like you're great at it, but how do you help other people to achieve a sense of flow? This idea of surrender is almost something that makes sense in hindsight more than it does in foresight.
So I'll give you the 3 steps, and that'll be actually the answer, because I teach it to people and people learn it very quickly.
Okay.
So the first one that I'm now calling now, surrender into the now, is a process of letting go of your ego. And you don't even have to think about that part. All you have to do is, it's amazing how quickly, you don't have to meditate. It helps.
Mm-hmm.
What I found is if I take people, guide them through 3 deep breaths, which takes less than a minute, they have a profound state change. And they begin the process of being in this now. And then the second step is being open. So I go, when I was arranging the book, I rearranged it. There are 14 chapters. I have no idea how many times. And I have a chapter on how to be more productive and how to structure your day, which is the kind of the opposite concept of flow, where things are kind of almost in a mystical way unfolding and without expectation, because you don't know what the next minute's going to be. And so I said, well, how am I going to arrange these? So I ended up with that, the one on productivity and how to structure your day and maximize your productivity being chapter 6 and flow being chapter 7. So I had flow come after it. And in the first paragraph of that chapter, I said, so, in essence, so now you know how to structure your day. And by the way, you may end up just throwing it all away. It's okay. Because in flow, everything shifts like that. So there's a great deal of importance in creating strategic plans, whether it's for your day, your week, your month, your year, whatever. But in flow, the second one is being open to there being a better new possibility that you know nothing about. And the example I give is that you have a 90-day outcome. I love arranging things in 90-day periods. And all of a sudden you meet somebody and you realize you can get there in a day because they've got the golden goose that you didn't even know existed. So you thought that you had to take these 90 days of steps to get there, and it's reasonable to have done that. And because you did that, you have a better understanding of where it is you're going. And that even helps you when you meet the person that has the golden goose, and by golly, you can just lay the 100 eggs today.
So can you give me an example of what that means? So like you're mapping out your 90 days.
Right.
This is where you want to go. And then somebody has the golden goose, has the key, has whatever it is.
Okay.
What kind of...
So right now I have some new coaching programs.
Okay.
Right. That I've put together that I'm just rolling out. And so I'm putting together the plan of how I get these new coaching clients. Right. So I'm actually working Friday all day on it. Right. But I know how this stuff works. And I could meet somebody. I'm looking for 10 clients for the specific coaching program who actually has all 10 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I could meet them tomorrow when I'm interviewing 5 people on my podcast. Right. That's an example. But if you're not open, if you've like already pre-decided in a very rigid way, which does not work well for an expansive mindset, that this is the way you have to get there because you've been working on the plan, you will not even notice the golden goose when you see it. But if you stay in this loose place that, yeah, I got a plan. I'll give you an example. When I sold the companies, I spent 1.5 years planning a 3-year journey, but the first 4 months was going to be in the United States, going to Canada. And I had sold my house real quickly. I wanted to sell my house. I didn't want any attachments. I wanted to move on, right? Put everything in storage. And so I was staying at my dad's place. And here I literally had this 4-month journey, because that was how I was thinking then, day by day, where I was going to be, where I was going to stay, the kind of activities I was going to do for 4 months. And 100 miles into the journey, I came to a place. I was leaving Florida. So I was on I-75, and you come to I-10. So I-10 goes east-west and I-75 goes north. My plan called for me to continue north. And about 10 minutes before I got to I-10, I started having this strong sense I should go east on I-10. And
which doesn't go nearly as far, right? I mean, if you're going
it's going to go
north,
up,
you can go a long way.
the coast and everything.
Right.
And by the time I got there, I had made a new decision because it was so strong in me. And therefore, metaphorically, I didn't litter the roads, folks, but it was all written out. I threw my whole plan away. Now, I ended up in a lot of the same cities, but in a totally different order, which also means I had a different experience from them because I'd had a different experience the day before. It changed my entire experience of this entire 4-month journey because I listened to this inner intuition, which is very connected to flow. And I said, I don't think that's the direction I'm going to flow. I think I'm going to go this direction, right? Change the whole thing. And that's exactly what I mean is make the plan, because there's a lot to be learned from studying all those details that you'll utilize probably, but be open to the plan unfolding completely differently. And then the third part is to be authentic, which is best understood as making decisions. And when you make them, go, does this feel real? Does this feel right for me? Do I have an internal kinesthetic that this is the right direction? I have traveled the world, well, 5 continents and 40 countries, mainly by myself, because the more I learned how to travel, I realized I love traveling by myself because I would immerse myself and meet so many people. I experienced it differently than if I went with somebody. I have never once been mugged, had any problems, gotten held up, because I'll go out in a major city and it's midnight and I'm looking down alleys and I go, nope. If some people are coming towards me and I go, nope, you don't want to have an encounter with these people, I just cross the street.
Mm-hmm.
But I pay attention to that almost antenna-like flow that's going on. And because I pay attention to it, I stay out of trouble and I have great experiences and find things that weren't on my list because I go, oh, you turn left here. That looks kind of like an interesting street. And then you find all the stuff you weren't going to find otherwise. That's being in flow. So it's not having outcomes, but it's being open for all of it shifting and accepting this is a hypothesis, cannot prove it, but I have a lot of experience that says it's probably true for me and other people. But when you're allowing this flow to occur, that things begin to happen in a way that are in not just my highest and best use, but the highest and best value of others, and I believe the whole humanity, because I'm having the exact experiences that are right for my journey. And things are going to open up and possibilities begin to happen that I knew nothing about 10 minutes before. And that's the magic of life. And there is a magic to all of this when we allow ourselves to experience. And the magic is miracles.
It's interesting when you talk about it because it's the flow, it's the letting go, it's the intuition. We started with your company, with Conscious Millionaire. Is there a commodity that is the most important, whether that's flow or time or money or intuition or insight or something like that is kind of the key that opens this whole thing?
It is coming to forever new stages and experiences of awareness. Because from the best of my experiences, and I've had a lot of very profound spiritual experiences, and that ultimately is, which is, and here I mean all that is just pure awareness.
So pure awareness. So in a lot of ways, it's the openness to wherever you're going. Does that seem accurate?
It's the being part. The being part. And in fact, that's one of my 7 money mindsets. It's the 7th one, is being. Is that most people, especially in Western society, spend, I think about my MBA. We didn't talk about being when there's chaos. We talked about, we got to take control of this chaos stuff, which I have learned is a completely ridiculous idea and actually impossible. Instead of just being with it and noticing where the chaos is unfolding, which is to a new place. It's like the caterpillar going through the chaos of metamorphosis, and then there's a butterfly, right? Well, you won't discover the butterfly if you try to kill the caterpillar during metamorphosis.
Okay. Yeah.
And the same thing happens in your business and life. It's like, no, this chaos is always leading to a greater whole. I've never experienced chaos that leads to a worse whole. It ultimately leads to a greater whole. The whole world right now is going, and I've been talking to a lot of people about this and talking in interviews. I believe between now and the end of this decade, the entire world is going to go through a deep chaos. We're certainly going through chaos in this country. You're going through chaos in Russia and Ukraine and in Europe. It's going to be everywhere. If you look at it from the outside, it looks like everything is messed up. But if you trust that there's a conscious world evolving from this, the butterfly is coming, and you think about, well, this is just the rearranging of things. So they'll be in a higher order. And that's really where we're going. And that to me is also part of being in the flow. People who are going to succeed at the highest levels that might right now be unimaginable to them, are going to live in that flow. And the people who are not going to do well in this chaos, because it's just, like we're beginning to see, look at what's happening in this country. It is a mess. I don't think I'm leaving that just like that. You interpret it however you want, but it's a mess. The people who try to control that, or the people who live in fear, oh my gosh, look how messed up things are getting, it's going to be more messed up tomorrow, are not going to do well as we get more chaotic on the outside from looking in. But if you trust the process and you stay in flow, you'll find the path that's right for you and your business, your life, your relationships. And that to me is the path through this to the conscious, a higher ground.
So there's a lot of belief, there's a faith, there's a
Trust
and a willingness to sort of suspend comprehension in some ways too.
Well, to realize that there's more than the appearance, that it's only an appearance of chaos, but at a deeper level, it's an evolution that's occurring.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we've got to stop, unfortunately, there, but JV, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an exciting journey.
Well, thank you so much. And I wish everybody listening that you choose to live in flow, because it is a much more peaceful and productive and exciting way to live life.
Yes, if we can stop getting in our own way, we'd be doing something pretty well, I think. Thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it. The greatest gift you can give us is to tell your friends. If you've enjoyed your time here, please tell your friends to tune in. We'll have another great guest next week. Please follow us, please like us, and we will look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks a ton. Thank you for joining us. Please subscribe to Chris Waddell Living It for more stories on the adaptive community, the Paralympics, artists, athletes, entrepreneurs, experts in the experience of being human. Also follow us on Spotify, Apple, Facebook, and Instagram. I look forward to seeing you next week.